Good day, folks, and welcome to the Anorak Review Show with your host, the Anorak. For some time now, I've been talking about Gorillaz, one of my many favourite bands, at least once a year, maybe every 2 years or so, if I'm lucky. Now, of course, the idea of a cartoon band is nothing all that new, even back then when Gorillaz first began around the dawn of the new millennium. You can go all the way back to the 50s and 60s for the likes of Dave Seville and the Chipmunks or the Archies. But even back then, they'd usually be based around a prior source material or a particular gimmick. Alvin and the Chipmunks would be sped up or pitched up high, while the Archies were based from the Archie show, which in turn was based on the characters of Archie comics. But Gorillaz were possibly not only one of the first to be referred to with the coined phrase virtual band or virtual group, but they were certainly at last among the first to be original characters in and of themselves and not be limited to just one kind of gimmick or be based on a prior source material. That, along with having all-around banger hit songs, would likely be the combined reasons for the band's instant and ongoing success even to this day. And of course, whenever there are successes, there are likely going to be imitations and imitators. And whenever there are imitators and imitations, there are equally likely going to be some not so sincere, not so flattering, and all-around lame ones, or just easily forgettable ones. Whether this may count as such or not would likely be itself a matter of debate and personal opinion. And I'm talking, of course, about the VBirds. They were created not so much by an individual or two, like with Gorillaz, but rather by a collective, Cartoon Network, or at least its UK division, and a couple of other people in collaborative efforts as far back as around 2002 to 2003. But while Gorillaz were and are mostly experimental in nature, with a mix of hip-hop, electronica, rock, pop, and even a bit of trip-hop in there as well, VBirds were more or less just mostly pop and R&B, pretty much modelled after a lot of girl groups that were hip and popular at the time, like the Sugar Babes, Spice Girls, Mystique, Destiny's Child, etc. So while Gorillaz were at least unique at the time, VBirds were pretty much like every other early girl band at the time. The most going for them is maybe their backstory and characterization, which I should get into first. In universe, they're a girl group consisting of 4 members: Boom, Wow, Bling, and D::Lin. They're aliens from a planet literally called Planet V, which I assume is somewhere between Planet R from Warning from Space and Planet X from Invasion of the Astro Monster, although with much less connection to tokusatsu or kaijus. They were declared guilty by the ruler of Planet V, King He::Lin, which I presume is some ways related to D::Lin, for, and I quote, refusing to play in the energy-producing dance farms. I have no idea what a dance farm is, but apparently they produce a lot of energy. So there's possibly some potential there, especially in this climate. Anyways, as punishment, they were banished in a spaceship to our planet Earth. So basically, this is Highlander 2 if Sean Connery and Christopher Lambert were Little Mix. Oh, and the ship itself transforms into an arcade cabinet with a dance pad, because Dance Dance Revolution was a thing back then too. And so, our heroes were forced to dance on screen for any unsuspecting people playing the arcade, and I guess they still are to this day, since we never see where this goes, and this group and its popularity only lasted for like a year or two. Out of universe, they did have a couple of shorts airing in between the regular programming of Cartoon Network at the time. Some of it are interviews of the characters, some of it are like dance tutorials, some of it could be found online on YouTube, and some of it could be considered lost media at this point. But I'm probably getting ahead of myself, so let's actually talk about their music. Or at least the one or two songs they actually did. Oh yeah, the VBirds only had one single. Not even an album or an EP or anything. I'd call them a one-hit wonder, but that would imply the song was even that big a hit to begin with. The title of said track in question is Virtuality. Get it? Because they're a virtual band, and so virtuality, subtle and clever. It's pretty simple and straightforward as a song. They sing about how they're not ordinary girls, not part of this world, and so on and so forth. The song itself isn't too bad actually. If you're into a lot of R&B stuff back in the day of the early 2000s and are a big fan of such and you listen to it and all that and still nostalgic for it, this is basically all that and you might enjoy it fine. Personally, if I were to choose any funky song that begins with virtual and ends with itty, I'd stick to Virtual Insanity by Jamiroquai. The only other song they did that isn't a remix was the B-side Dance With Me. Although it might as well be, since while it does have a chorus and hook of its own, it still reuses some vocal bits from Virtuality and even the classic Yeah, Woo sample from Think About It by Lynn Collins and James Brown, made popular by It Takes Two by Rob Bass and DJ EZ Rock. It's still a bit of a fancy, groovy little tune if you're into a lot of techno-pop music of the time. The last track to address is the Slim Red's Planet V mix of Virtuality, which still uses the lyrics of the original, just over a slightly hip-hoppier music rhythm and beats. Nothing too much to say about it. Overall in all, the VBirds are an interesting little experiment, clearly made to follow up on the success and popularity of a much bigger virtual band. And in spite of that, or rather because of that, it ended up falling into obscurity and irrelevancy, and it's highly unlikely we'll ever see the return of them ever again. Now, does that make them bad? Of course not. Like I said, if you're into pop and R&B music of the 2000s, or at least feeling a bit nostalgic for that era, this might be right up your street. And if you actually grew up this band, I can appreciate that, and let me know in the comments. But whilst other virtual groups like Gorillaz managed to prove themselves that they could be more than just a gimmick, linked to many more virtual bands since then like Death Clock, Studio Killers, and the idols of Vocaloid, the VBirds were mostly treated as just that, a gimmick. And that may be why they aren't around as we would like them to be anymore. Next time, we go back to talking about actual albums yet again, as we look at another album by another progressive rock band.